You know, it's interesting how fast things can change around the NFL. One minute a roster looks completely set, and the next, a big move happens that nobody saw coming. That's why Seahawks fans need to pay close attention right now, because there are some situations developing around the league that could end up creating real opportunities for Seattle. If the front office sees a chance to improve this team, history has shown they're not afraid to be aggressive, and the names being discussed could definitely get fans talking. Before we jump into it, make sure you hit that like button and drop a comment below with "Go Hawks" if you're riding with the Seahawks this season. A new wave of potential NFL trades is creating serious discussion around the Seattle Seahawks, and the reason this conversation is gaining momentum comes from comments highlighted by ESPN's Jeremy Fowler regarding the changing mentality of general managers across the league. According to the discussion presented in the source material, NFL teams are becoming much more willing to make aggressive moves, moving away from the old philosophy of protecting draft capital at all costs. General managers are reportedly more eager than ever to complete deals, especially when they believe a single player can help push a team forward, or when a rebuilding franchise decides that collecting future assets is the better path. That shift in thinking is what makes this situation so interesting for Seattle. The belief presented is that the Seahawks are led by decision-makers who are not afraid to act if they identify an opportunity that improves the roster. John Schneider is described as a general manager willing to pursue players who fit the system and address needs, while Mike Macdonald is portrayed as a coach who is not hesitant to communicate exactly what the team requires. The idea here is simple. If the right player becomes available, Seattle has leadership that is willing to explore a major move rather than sit on the sidelines and watch opportunities pass by. The conversation begins with a look at some of the major trades that have already captured attention around the league. One of the most significant examples mentioned is the move involving Myles Garrett and the Los Angeles Rams. The point made is not simply about Garrett himself, but about what the trade represents. Players of that caliber rarely become available, and when they do, teams must decide quickly whether they are willing to pay the price. In this case, another team in the division was able to capitalize on the opportunity. The discussion also references the A.J. Brown trade to New England. Unlike the Garrett situation, this move is presented as less surprising because wide receiver trades have become increasingly common. The broader takeaway is that star players are no longer viewed as untouchable assets. If circumstances align, teams are prepared to make difficult decisions, and contenders are often willing to spend valuable resources in pursuit of immediate improvement. That is where the Seahawks enter the conversation. The central argument is that Seattle could eventually become involved in one of these major transactions. The organization is not being portrayed as passive. Instead, the suggestion is that the Seahawks could be among the teams monitoring situations around the league, waiting for the right opportunity to emerge. Jeremy Fowler's comments add another layer to this discussion. The report describes a league in which rebuilding teams are quicker to accept reality and move veteran players, while contenders are increasingly embracing a one-player-away mindset. There is also a growing willingness to move on from expensive contracts if relationships no longer work. Taken together, those trends create a trade market that may remain active throughout the season rather than cooling off after the off-season. The source argues that the NFL has evolved significantly in this area. There was a time when front offices were reluctant to make major trades because of fear that a deal could backfire and damage the future of the franchise. Now, organizations appear more comfortable taking calculated risks. Some teams are aggressively pursuing championships, while others are accumulating draft assets for long-term rebuilding projects. Within that framework, Seattle is presented as a team that could potentially take advantage of organizations moving in the opposite direction. If another franchise decides it needs draft picks more than established talent, the Seahawks may find opportunities to strengthen areas of need. The first major name discussed is Max Crosby. This is a player who has been connected to trade speculation before, but the expectation had often been that a move was unlikely. However, the comments highlighted in the source suggest that perhaps the possibility should not be dismissed so quickly. The reasoning centers on the future direction of the Raiders. If the organization reaches a point where rebuilding becomes the priority, then moving a player with tremendous value could become part of that strategy. The discussion makes clear that Crosby is not being portrayed as someone forcing his way out. Instead, the scenario depends on the Raiders deciding that acquiring significant draft capital would better serve their long-term goals. For Seattle, the appeal is obvious. Crosby is viewed as a player capable of making a major impact. Yet, there is also acknowledgement that acquiring him would require a substantial investment. The Seahawks would likely need to surrender meaningful assets, while also managing the financial implications of adding such a high-profile player. Even so, what makes this noteworthy is the shift in tone. Rather than completely dismissing the possibility, the discussion leaves the door open. Recent developments around the league have shown that trades once considered unlikely can suddenly become reality. Another name generating attention is Alex Highsmith. The connection here revolves around Seattle's apparent desire to add another edge rusher. The question is whether that addition would come through free agency or through a trade. Highsmith becomes interesting because of Pittsburgh's roster situation. The discussion points to multiple pass rushers already occupying important roles and receiving significant investments. That creates a scenario where roster decisions become more complicated, especially if younger or newly extended players are expected to see larger roles. When healthy, Highsmith is described as a productive defender, capable of contributing both as a pass rusher and against the run. He is viewed as a high-volume player who can impact games and potentially strengthen a defense looking for additional edge pressure. Another factor mentioned is contract control. Highsmith reportedly remains under contract for multiple seasons, meaning a team acquiring him would not be making a short-term rental move. Instead, they would be obtaining a player who could remain part of the roster beyond a single campaign. The possibility becomes even more intriguing when considering what might happen if Pittsburgh struggles. If circumstances shift and the Steelers decide that accumulating future assets is more important than maintaining the current roster structure, trade discussions could become more realistic. A specific trade concept is even floated involving a future third-round selection. However, there is acknowledgement that the actual price could change depending on performance and market conditions. The larger point is not the exact compensation, but the fact that Seattle could be evaluating opportunities like this as the season unfolds. The final major name discussed is Kayvon Thibodeaux. Reports highlighted in the source suggest he has been generating positive attention during off-season activities and minicamp work. While injuries have affected portions of recent years, the belief expressed is that a healthy Thibodeaux possesses the ability to be a significant contributor, particularly as a pass rusher. The Giants are portrayed as a team likely to remain patient rather than rushing into a decision. They may prefer to evaluate their season before seriously considering any move involving a player of that caliber. Because of that, this situation is viewed as one that Seattle could continue monitoring rather than one expected to develop immediately. What makes all three names significant is that they fit the broader theme emerging from the report. The NFL trade market may be far more active than many expected. Teams are increasingly willing to make bold decisions, contenders are searching for every possible advantage, and rebuilding franchises are more open to collecting future assets. For the Seahawks, that creates an environment filled with possibilities. Whether any specific deal actually materializes remains uncertain, But the growing willingness of teams around the league to engage in major transactions means Seattle could find itself involved in meaningful conversations as the season progresses. And now I want to hear from you. If the Seahawks decide to make a major move before the trade deadline, which of these players would you target, and how much would you be willing to give up to get the deal done? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because this is a debate that Seahawks fans are definitely going to be having over the next few months. If you enjoyed this update, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you never miss breaking Seahawks news, leave a like on the video, and share it with another Seahawks fan. And don't leave just yet. Click on the video that's on your screen right now because that's where you'll find more Seahawks news, rumors, and analysis before everyone else. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Go Hawks!